Okay, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen, wa salatu wa salam ala sayyidina al-anbiya wal mursaleen, nabiyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in, amma ba'd. We are now in chapter 3, Kasr Shahwat, or Shahwatain, breaking the two desires, inshallah, and this consists of about 8 chapters. We might be able to finish it in about 6 weeks or so. So alhamdulillah, we've set a good pace and how we're moving through the Iḥyā. So basically, he starts out by praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and sending salah and salam on the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, very much talking about how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one that created us, He is the one that guided us, He is the one that has nurtured us, He is the one that has brought us to the point that we are today. Why is it important to start off this chapter with that? Because remember, just the theme of this entire section is breaking the two desires. Okay, to seek blessings, there's no doubt. And blessings essentially is what? Is seeking protection, right? And asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to put good into whatever actions that we're doing, right? That's why we invoke Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But that reminder that He's the one that created us, He's the one that guided us, He's the one that made us, He's the one that nurtured us. Why is it important to keep that context or that theme in mind when we deal with Allah?
He's the one who guided you to this.
Right? He's the one that brought you to this point. And He's going to what? Right, He's going to take you to the end of your journey. All you have to do is allow Him into your life, make sure that He Azza wa Jal is part of the conversation, and make sure that He subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one that, He's going to be the one to help us through all of these issues and help us through all of these problems. And then obviously the importance of sending salah and salam on the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He is our gateway to Allah. Simple. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, without him, without his presence, we would have none of this. We would have none of the things that we have in front of us today. It is through him that we have guidance. It is through him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that we have our sharia. It is through him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that we have everything that is here concerning our religion today. So the mortal vices. What do you think he boils down the two mortal vices to? And they're shahwatain. It's the two types of appetence. The two types of desire. Huh? The stomach. Ahsant, good.
You also mentioned women. Was it the second one?
The second one was women? Even for other women?
No, he did mention it.
He does, but under what? Under what? Like, obviously we don't want to consume women, right?
You never know.
Yeah, lower. You're going too high. Right? So he's talking about the sexual desire and the sexual appetite. So the two appetites that he's going to be talking about and discussing in the entire theme of this section is going to be talking about the desire of the stomach, the physical appetite, and the lustful desire and the lustful appetite, and how to deal with these two. He's going to focus on this section on hunger. So he's going to focus on the stomach and the desire of the stomach. So he mentions a few things I think is important to keep in mind. He said it is from the desire of the stomach that Adam and Hawa were expelled from paradise. He also mentions that the source of many diseases and disorders come from, again, the stomach. He then talks about lust, right? So we said that this is the second type of desire that he's going to be discussing in this chapter. He says women, this is where he mentions it, right? And then fame and wealth. So how is fame and wealth related to lust?
There's a lot of lust is fueled by fame and wealth.
Right. So yes, right. So in order for me to increase my lust, it has to be fueled by something. And fame and wealth is definitely part of that. And lust can also be something not necessarily physical. It can also be something that's intangible, right? Lusting after wealth, greed, avarice, all of these things. He says that it stems from lust. He says these things actually stem from lust, not the physical want or the physical need. He's saying this is actually something that has there is a secondary reason and a secondary motivation that's behind it. So the first chapter, he mentions, it's just full of narrations. So basically it's a bunch of quotes, some of them prophetic, some of them come after the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, some of them from famous scholars, some of them from famous awliya. And from them, the ones that I pulled out are this one, where the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that a human being fills no worse vessel than his stomach. So a man fills no worse vessel than his stomach. It is sufficient for a man to eat a few morsels to keep himself upright. But if he must fill it, then 1/3 of food, 1/3 for drink, and 1/3 for air. What do you guys think about this hadith?
The overeating.
Right, so he's talking about overeating for sure. What else? What is he saying even about our own personal gauge of consumption? I'm sorry? All right, don't eat too much, for sure. How do I figure out what's 1/3? Right, so you can actually, you might be able to physically measure it, right? So I measure my stomach, how much my stomach can hold, and then I break that into thirds. That's one way. I don't know how realistic that is. Okay. All right, so until I'm satiated, what's actually really interesting is when does my stomach tell me I'm full? Right, there's a delay, right? There's like a 15-20 minute delay before the time my stomach actually tells me I am full. How do I deal with that?
Slowly.
I can consume slowly. That's one way of dealing with it. What's another way?
Share.
Sitting with other people, right? So these are some ways to mitigate that. I learned portion control, all of these things, but basically, who do I need to turn to figure out these things? I need to turn to myself. This involves a lot of self-knowledge. It's important for us to all understand our own personal gauge. How do I reset the gauge in this situation? By not eating. Right? By bringing myself to a place of hunger. And then how do I reintroduce food into my diet? Slowly. And how do I do that? By starting with, right, a date, right? Allah Akbar, right? By starting with morsels, right? Like by starting with significantly smaller portions. And if I find myself weak, what do I need to do? Right, I need to increase my portion. And if I find myself, if it's sufficient, that small portion that I'm taking, what do I do? Right, that's where I need to stop. Like I've now set my gauge and I have an idea of what my caloric intake should be so that I can function. Granted, they have a band, right? There's a band of calories that an individual needs to take. I think like for guys, it's like what, 1,800? If you're trying to diet and grow, like women, it's like 1,500, something like that. But that's just in terms of pure calories. But in terms of actual amounts of consumption, every individual really needs to learn how to gauge that and how to deal with that. And we'll talk about why it is that's important. Why is it important for me to gauge my intake? He mentions a few narrations also. So Hassan al-Basri, he said that thought is half of worship. Thought is half of worship. And frugality in food is actual worship. Again, these are things that need to be thought about. Why is it that they're mentioning this? Why so much importance given to even the Prophet? He's giving importance to food. He's giving importance to consumption. Why does this theme come up again and again? He also mentions that Shaitan courses through the son of Adam like blood, so make his path difficult with hunger and thirst. Why? What is hunger and thirst going to do to that?
You just don't have the energy.
You lose it, right? You're actually physically weaker, right? You're actually physically weaker, and because you're physically weaker, over here, like the Prophet saying this, does this mean that like Shaitan is like physically moving through our blood like red blood cells?
No, you just don't have the ability to act on it.
Right? He's basically talking about the pervasive ideas that the Shaitan actually instills in us. Right? And because those are the ideas that are instilled in us, we have to break those pathways, right? We have to break those pathways where the Shaitan is actually influencing us and actually whispering to us. Umar radiallahu anh, he said, beware of satiety. Satiety, you guys know what satiety is? It's the feeling of being full, right? It's the feeling of being full, for it is a burden in this life and a source of corruption. Huh? We will talk about some of the things that stem from satiety. We'll talk about some of those things that stem from actually being full and overeating or overindulgence. And again, the importance of focusing on food, the importance of focusing on hunger. The second pillar of Islam is what? Zakat, right? The third pillar is Sawm. And essentially, what is Sawm? What are the two things that we are being prevented from? Food and drink and intimacy. Why are those two things so important? Again, this is something that's thematic.
These are the most primal desires.
These are the most prominent desires. Not only just the most prominent, these are the strongest ones, right? These are the things that actually motivate people. They'll push them to do things. People will steal out of hunger. People will fight out of hunger. People kill out of hunger. And lust, what will lust lead to? Lust leads to corruption. Lust will always lead to corruption. You won't have fighting the same way you will for hunger, but it leads to corruption in the land. Sahl al-Tustari, he said, wisdom and knowledge have been set in hunger, in ignorance, in sin, in satiety. We see a lot of this thematic recurrence of the importance of hunger and how to understand it and how to deal with it. And inshallah, when we get to the end of the chapter, we'll talk about why it is that this is something that's so important and what is it that he's actually talking about. Yes.
The early Muslims were once hungry all the time. I can imagine the Sahaba were.
Yeah.
That has impacts on.
And we need to talk about that.
Right. That was my curiosity.
Yeah. And we have to talk about that. So that people just walking around hungry.
I mean,
right?
It's anything fast every day, but
it's gonna take its toll.
Yeah.
Like I'm just not gonna be physically strong. Right? Okay.
Even just historical look at the previous generation, they were much poorer than our generation. Back in the day, they didn't have as much wealth, as much technology, production.
So over here, number is okay. Well, that's good.
Yeah,
So they didn't have as much available.
I believe they were poor.
Okay.
They were hungry.
Okay.
I think they had. We're gonna get into it.
We'll get to it, inshallah. I think it's a good discussion. The Prophet ﷺ. So that hadith where Aisha radiallahu anha said that we survived on the two black things, dates and water. Is she talking about that as like something that is to be striven for, or is he just giving us an insight to the life of the Prophet ﷺ? Right, it's just insight to like how deprived they were. Right, it's not like the Prophet ﷺ had like a very luxurious life, right? It was really tough. It was really tough. It was really difficult. Yeah.
There's also narration before Khaybar, we never had. We're always basically hungry. We never felt. Satiation.
Yeah. Like we never were full. We never ate to our full.
Yeah.
Like we never had that much food.
But even in Iḥyā, I think in this chapter, Ghazāli mentions a shafi'i once eating to his full.
Yeah.
Missing, I think,
Qiyam.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
Like we can't even make fajr. It's not talking about qiyam.
yeah. So all the supposed all the extra. The striving, that hunger. Once you have that, satiation, sports.
Yeah.
It's just you're content.
Yeah.
Just comfortable.
Yeah.
I know it's sometimes I know that one has to drink like milk to his full. So it feels like sometimes.
So the problem is like I think it's important to keep all of these things in context, and like I said, we'll get to it. Let's see where Ghazāli takes us, and then we'll do a little bit of critical analysis of some of the things that he mentions. All right, which brings us to the next chapter, right? So chapter 1 is just full. You have all these narrations talking about the virtue of hunger and how important it is to be hungry, and how you shouldn't fill your stomach, and satiety is a problem. Stay away from food. It's going to I only had bread for like 20 years. Like, what I mean? Like you have all of these different like narrations about simplicity and staying away from food. I think what was it that they're telling us? I mean? Like what is the purpose of those narration? What is the purpose of those ahadith? What is the message that is really trying to be relayed? Okay, we'll see. We shall see. So some people will say, okay, well, hunger basically is what? It's just pain and torment, right? Because what happens? Like when I'm hungry, I'm what? Like I have stomach pains and I feel tormented. I'm constantly thinking about what? Food. I'm constantly thinking about what I'm going to eat, when I'm going to eat, how am I going to eat? And they say, if that's the case, then why don't we just start harming ourselves? Like, why not just start cutting ourselves? Like, what I mean? Like, why don't we just start abusing ourselves? If if there's reward and pain and torment, then why don't we just start hurting ourselves? Like, oh man, Muharram started too, right? So he's saying here that, okay, it's actually a treatment. This happens, but why is it happening? Because it's a treatment. This is just a side effect. It's not the actual what. This is not the goal, right? The goal isn't to feel pain and torment. That's not the goal. The goal is that hunger is meant to be a treatment, and that pain and that torment is actually a side effect. He likens this very much to eating or taking bitter medicine. Is the goal the bitterness of the medicine? No, the goal is the treatment behind it, right? There's something that is beyond this pain and torment. There's something that's beyond it that is being sought. And what is being sought is that this treatment. And what is the treatment for? That's what we'll talk about. So he mentions 10 benefits for hunger. And this is why I got confused in the previous class. I remembered 10 here and it was actually 13. But anyway, he says purification, softness, humility, reminder of Allah's torment, breaks all desires, repulsion of sleep, lengthy acts of worship are made easier, physical health, frugality, meaning that you're not going to spend as much and you're content with what you have. And lastly, it allows us to think of others. Let's talk about these one by one. Here, so over here, this is physical. This here, what is he talking about? What kind of purification? Of the heart, right? This is spiritual purification that happens. Why? Why would this type of purification happen due to hunger? Right. So now that you are learning now to control that desire, right? And learning to control desires is one of the means of purifying our hearts. Like softness. Why does softness? Like I thought it would be like you'd be more like irritable, right? When you didn't have food. Why softness?
You don't eat, you're not like you're soft. Like,
well, okay, but I'm saying I would question this. Why? Why would an individual be softer when he's hungry?
It's like thinking of others.
Right. You start becoming more appreciative. That's the idea. Because the hunger, this is under the guise of what? Why is an individual hungry? What purpose is it? Right, to treat the vices. And if I'm doing it with that intention, that I'm doing it for purification, and that I'm doing it for Allah, right? I'm doing it for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Keeping that in mind, I should, if I'm doing it the right way. Because even with fasting, what happens with many people when they're fasting? I'm sorry? Right, they become angry. And putting myself keeping that perspective is like, okay, when I deal with this person in front of me, why is it that I'm angry? When I'm fasting, am I doing the person in front of me any favors? No. And that means I need to do what when I'm fasting? Right, I need to check my intention. And I need to think about why. That's something that's really fundamental and something that's really important. Like humility. Why does it make me humble?
because it reminds you of the poor people.
Right, it reminds you of others. And it allows us to really, the purpose behind this is that introspection, right? Really looking at myself, looking at my heart, really understanding a lot of those things. You know, putting that stuff in perspective, it should bring that humility, because with softness is going to come humility.
I would also add that reminds how imperfect we are,
how we need Allah, right? Because I don't have it, I'm deprived of something. The only one that can fulfill it is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Reminder of Allah's torment, that if this is the pain that I am feeling now, then how much more is the pain in the hereafter if I am to be punished? May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us. Ameen. Breaks all desires. If I manage to control this desire, then it helps me develop a strategy and get used to destroying other desires. Repulsion of sleep. If I'm not eating as much, I'm going to sleep less. It's something that's really natural, right? If I'm eating less, I'm going to be sleeping less as well, because my cycle will be more regulated. And again, we'll talk about what he means by hunger, because I think that's something that's really important. Lengthy acts of worship are made easier, right? Because I'm not like burping, right? Right? Yeah, you know, oh man, I love this stuff. Physical health, this is something that I think there's no doctor that disagrees with the importance of fasting and making sure that we have correct diet control. Like we have an entire field of science like around nutritionists that revolve around making sure that we have balanced diets. Frugality, I become satisfied with much less, and it'll allow me to be more frugal, allow me to spend more more appropriately. And lastly, it allows me to think of others, right? It allows me to think of others, and that's something that's really important. And this is the basis of khuluq, right? This is the basis of my mu'amalat. This is the basis of me dealing with others and understanding how to deal with others. Any questions on any of these? No. So points of distinction, like what is it that Ghazāli is actually talking about? I think we have to understand there's a difference between hunger and starvation. So what does he mean when he talks about hunger? Based on what we read and based on what we've gone through, what do you guys think Ghazāli means by hunger? It's a type of restriction. A restriction from what though? What point does he not want us to reach?
Harm ourselves.
Right? So excess is definitely one. And when he's talking about shaba, or when he's talking about satiety, what does he mean? Because what did we say? The time it takes for my stomach to tell my brain I'm full, what happens by that time? I've already overeaten. You understand? I've already overeaten. So he's saying that the idea is just to drive off what? When he's talking about hunger, it means eating enough to drive this off, that I can function. And what is that basically? It's controlling our diets. That's basically what it is. Understanding how much to eat to make sure that we are functional, to make sure, because this is not the goal. Like starving is not the goal. That is what actual torment is. But in order to get to a point where I'm just staving off hunger, what do I need to do? I might have to starve myself at times, because what are we doing? We're trying to reset that gauge. And in order for me to reset that gauge, I need to bring myself to a point of starvation so that I understand how much am I actually supposed to eat and how much it is I am actually able to consume. And this is training for all of the other things that we do in our lives. We reset our personal gauges so that we learn to come back to the middle, because the goal is always going to be mu'tadil, or to be balanced. He says hunger is by choice. This is not forced. So some of the things that, well, they just didn't have it available. No, that wasn't the point. That they would be hungry by choice. And what do we mean by being hungry by choice? By not eating, not overeating. That's the entire discussion here. That we do not overeat, because the point of satiety, but by the time I realize it, I'm already past that point. If I'm eating and I'm keep eating, and now I feel I'm full, I've already passed that like way before. So in order for me to actually gauge it again, we have to get back to that point of starvation. This is the individual self-reinforcement. This is something that I have to gauge for myself. I can go talk to a nutritionist and I can, I can get help from other people, but even they will only be able to help me as much as I help myself, as much as information as I give them. And I can only give them information when I know myself, when I learn about myself, when I learn about my body, and I learn about what it is that I want and what it is that I'm seeking. So he says that, I'm sorry, but this is my summary, and this is my takeaway, that the stomach is representative of shahwa. It's a representative of appetence. So if one is able to control his stomach, then he is able to control other types of desires that he has and channel them in a positive way, channel them in a good way. So if I'm hungry, what is one thing I can do? I can order a larger meal and maybe take some friends with me, because it's a good way of channeling that. I'm able to fulfill my need, and I want to help others with an amount of, because this is the amount I would normally eat if I was by myself. So what do? I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna channel this in a good way, and I'm gonna do this in a good way, and I'm gonna share with someone else. There's so many things that we can do. Once we learn how to control these individual desires, it becomes that much easier to control other desires as well. So remember, hunger is not the goal, right? Being balanced is what the goal is. And if we are balanced, then it makes it that much easier for us to navigate our lives and to control our desires. So like we said, spiritual clarity. How do I get spiritual clarity from that? Because now that I've controlled my desires, I've controlled how much I can eat, it makes my worship that much more fulfilling, because I'm doing all of those things that I'm supposed to do. I'm breaking that desire, and I'm channeling things into more positive works, right? I'm spending my money in a better way. I'm spending my time in a better way, right? I'm not spending as much time eating. I'm becoming more humble. My dealings with others is becoming better, because that hunger is supposed to remind me of who I'm doing it for. And those pangs are supposed to be for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The idea isn't to starve to the point of hallucination, right? That's not the goal at all. The idea is to just break that desire. The idea is to channel it. The idea is to become a better person, to become a better Muslim, to become a better individual. Exactly. Like, and he talked about this, remember 2 books ago, saying that the self should be like what? Like the king on the throne. And his shahwa should be like his guard dog. He should be able to control it when it goes. Not, it shouldn't control him and what it is that he wants and what it is that he seeks. Because that anger, that appetence, that lust, all of those things, they can all be channeled in good ways. And they can all be channeled in positive ways. It's just a matter of understanding how much control we have over that. And the reality is we have full control over them. Developing this habit and understanding when to eat, how much to eat, it's so easy. It's not something that's challenging at all in any way, shape, or form. So this is the end of the first 2 chapters. This is a summary of a lot of what he talks about. Is there anything here that isn't clear to you guys, or something that you guys would like to discuss? Or let's talk about how it was our understanding of what Ghazāli said correct, or did you guys read something else into it?
Is there room for like a cheat day?
So this idea of hunger, what is he talking? Is he talking about a lifestyle? Is he talking about moments? Is he talking? What is he talking about? I'm sorry? He's talking about developing a habit of it. So if I develop a habit of it, if I have a day off, is that going to destroy the habit? No. The only problem could be is what? Right? If that becomes a habit, right? If the cheat day becomes the norm. But having the reverse is completely fine. It's something that's reasonable. You find with the Prophet ﷺ himself that there are times where he drank and ate to his fill, right? You find that. But was that a character trait that he had, that he would always eat to his fill, or that he would always drink to his fill? No, it wasn't. Sometimes does it happen? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's normal. I think that's healthy. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. The idea here is to develop a lifestyle and to understand that even when I get to that point, even when I eat to my fill, I am able to what? I'm able to stop. I'm able to recognize it. And when the next day comes, what happens? I can go right back to my habit. I can quit anytime, right? Is that what it is? I love stuff. Like while you're puffing. Anything else? Any other comments?
The question I asked before about like, so it wasn't necessarily that they were starving themselves,
no,
or they were losing weight. It was just a lifestyle of control.
Absolutely.
The appetite.
That's all it is.
So it wasn't like, because when you read it, like, so I don't know, morsels is like morsels.
Yeah.
Seem like a lot, right? So
Yeah.
how are they able to go to war if everyone's like?
if everybody's bone skinny, or everybody's starving all the time, or not just that, like you hear about some of the companions having folds, right? You know what I mean? Like some of them are big, like they're big dudes, like some of them, and some of them are like a bucket, like bones. You know what I mean? Like really skinny. And all of them were different. It's just the idea is understanding how to break those desires and understanding how to deal with them. Because if we're able to develop a habit where we can break this desire, then it should be that much easier to break any other desires that we have and really channel them into a positive way and use them for good. Is that what it is? Because they're all Ghazāli? You never know. Dun, dun, dun.
It's a big thing, so-called intermittent fasting.
Yes, it is. And the thing is, subhanAllah, you know, when you have things like intermittent fasting, you have the keto, and then there was paleo, and then, you know what I mean? And then it's like, no, the best thing is actually a balanced diet and doing portion control. You will find that Islam has always consistently taught what? The importance of balance. Simple. It's not, you know, and the moment you start skewing in one direction, what happens? That balance is shifted and it's broken. So yeah, and the thing is it okay? Like, you know, like, okay, let me test this. Let me see how it goes. There's nothing wrong with that. You know, just testing certain things, you know, trying out different things. Why? Because everybody's body is different, and everybody's body is going to react in a different way. It's important for us to understand that, and understand our bodies, understand ourselves, and understand what is it that we actually need in order to move forward and to get through life. Because we want to have a balanced path, right? That's the idea. You know, if I'm able to control this desire, I'm able to control my anger. I'm able to control my lust. I'm able to control so many other things that are pulling at me internally and help me make sound decisions. Any other questions?
Well, I had a question
Yeah.
about in the fifth class.
Sure.
It was like someone like there's someone saying like preach Imam, you know, like in the khutbah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what was the exact feeling of that?
That's okay. I mean, because you're engaging the Imam directly. It's not preferred if it starts becoming a disturbance, but I think his salah will still be fine. Plus, if we don't have any other questions, inshallah, I'll see you guys next week. We still have time. Yeah, if you guys have any questions, you want to hang out until Isha, that's fine.
I have one related question.
Sure.
One immediate question I have. So I want to buy a new phone,
Mhm.
and my employee is ready to pay for it.
Yeah.
And so back, step back. Generally, insurance, the idea of insurance is in Islam, general is haram, the concept.
Oh.
No, hold on. So if I buy a new phone and my employer won't cover it,
Yeah.
can I choose insurance protection, monthly insurance protection? I'm not paying it,
Yeah.
but I can choose to have it or not. My employer doesn't.
So insurance, basically, there is a concept of insurance in Islam. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says, "Innama al-bay' bil-daman." He says that sales must be with warranties. Like there has to be an agreement, so that this prevents the sale of lemons, right? So what is a lemon? A lemon is it's an idiom. It's a metaphor for something that's, you know, you're selling something that's broken. So the Prophet ﷺ put that condition there to make sure that all sales are being done with some type of guarantee behind those sales. So is there a Islamic basis and foundation for it? Yeah, because what happens in those cases is like when something is sold and there was some type of cheating that happened in that sale, it becomes the right of the buyer to now what? To return to the seller, right? You can't just be like, oh, no, that's it. Except with as is. As is different. Because you're going in with the understanding that what? That you're taking a risk. So as is different, and that's why there's no, it's okay for those sales to not have guarantees. Yeah, no. So the manufacturers. So the thing is, okay, why are manufacturers' warranties okay? Because some scholars will use this, and if it's coming from the manufacturer, it's okay. The problem that many scholars have with the insurance system, whether it be product insurance or whether it be liability insurance, whether it be life insurance, even they'll say that this is bay'al gharar. This is bay'al majhul. That this is an unknown type of sale. You don't really know what you're buying. There's no guarantee that you'll break it, and this and that, which is a reasonable argument. Other scholars will respond and say like, okay, well, you're buying a service similar to how you buy a security guard, right? So you're paying for a security guard. You might not ever utilize the services, but that entire time you've been paying. And that's what you are paying for here. You're paying for a protection service, for an item, for a device. And it is not majhul, it's not unknown. You know exactly what you're getting when the item breaks. Whether you utilize it or not, it's up to you. It's similar to buying like a subscription. So if I buy a subscription to the gym and I never go, is that sale permissible?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Why? Because I'm purchasing access, right? I'm not purchasing the use. There's a different thing, and it's the same thing. You know, the same. So those same scholars would argue the same thing with insurance. Now, when it comes into things like health insurance and life insurance, some would argue you have something that's in the Eastern world called takaful ijtimai, which is basically like social insurance. So what happens in that is historically what would happen is that if there's any type of diya, any type of blood money that was due, depending on the interaction, the money wouldn't actually be demanded from the perpetrator. It wouldn't be demanded from the person. It would be demanded from the aqila. The aqila is the family, right? They're basically the family support. It would say, okay, no, the aqila has to pay.
The state. The
The family, right? So yeah. So the thing is, you have to realize, like, Islam inherently was a very tribal system, right? So the tribe would be responsible for the payment of blood money if there was any type, somebody hit somebody and broke his leg. Okay, who pays? It would be the aqila. It wouldn't be the person, individual. It would actually be the family that pays for him. So now that system is broken down. Like we don't have that family support system. You can't go to the judge and the judge would be like, okay, the aqila has to pay this. He's going to be like, I don't have one. Like I don't have that family support that's going to pay for this. So then they said, all right, what if we all, like in this room, we all voluntarily pool our money? We put $100 a month into a pool. And if la samahullah, something happens, then what do? We take from that pool. And what do we do with that pool yearly? We invest it yearly and all of the returns go back into that pool. Or everybody, those returns that are coming in from the investments, the contribution that we make every year is going to be less because there's more money coming in, depending on the agreement. But that's a voluntary agreement that's happening. So they're saying, okay, well, if that voluntary agreement can happen between people, why can't it happen between companies? And if it can happen between companies, and we understand that there's a underlying basis for incidentals in Islam, like blood money, and the system is like that, and it's for the protection of the community and for the protection of individuals, then it's okay to have that in health insurance. And by extension, it's also okay to have that in life insurance. So I think life insurance is permissible. And I had a brother tell me saying, I don't think it's permissible. I was like, cool. So you must think like GoFundMe is wajib. And he's like, why do you say that? I was like, because look at all of the patrons of the different families, like the main financial provider, once he passes, look at the number of Muslim families on these websites. Is that a way to preserve the honor of the Muslims? Allah protect us.
I caught the last, that you were talking about the fourth Jummah.
Yeah.
I didn't catch the whole thing, but is that everything you said?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I think I might have gone into a little bit more detail.
So if someone, let's say I make wudu and I wipe off my socks.
Yeah.
And
You make wudu and then you put your socks on and then wipe over them?
yeah.
Okay, just making sure.
So then, let's say I decide to take off my socks
Sure.
and
Oh. Bro, it's like so much khilaf right there. Like the moment you took your socks off, you just entered like, anyway, continue.
Both socks or one sock?
so I take off my socks.
Yeah.
And let's say I break my wudu
Without the socks now?
without the socks on.
Yeah, you just make regular wudu.
I make wudu.
Yeah.
But I can't.
You can't put your socks back on and be like, no, it doesn't work. The problem would be depending on the madhab. If you had wudu, then you put your socks on, you broke it, you made wudu and wiped, then you took your socks off. You still have what? You still have wudu depending on the madhab. Yeah, the Hanbalis no. You broke it. They're like, so I think it's like Ibn Taymiyyah and like Bayhaqi. They thought it was you would still have wudu, regardless of the number of times you take your socks on and off. So that you definitely do have that. So try not to take your socks off.
So basically, if I take off my socks, I break my wudu.
Yeah.
It's like collect the 24-hour thing.
No, that doesn't apply at all. Like the moment you take your socks off and break your wudu, that's it. You have to wash your feet. And like I said, in some madhab, the moment you take your socks off, you have to wash your feet.
Is there any specific guidance that we should go read for buying life insurance? Because there's so many options. Like, is there variances that?
So the argument is like, all right, well, if I buy the service from X life insurance, they invest in X things, right? There are two ways that life insurance companies make money. One is through investments, and the second is through default, like people defaulting on their payments or cutting off their insurance, right? So some people argue like, okay, look for life insurance companies that are socially responsible, right? To make sure that their money is going the right place and blah, blah, blah. The counter argument to that is like, okay, when was the last time you asked Apple where they're investing their money?
Yeah. They have some sort of,
What?
like, ethical investment.
No, it's so ethical might be one. It's also called socially responsible investing, and then you have the next tier, which is like Islamic guideline investing. So you do have tiers within that, but usually the most control most people have are the socially responsible or ethically responsible, and that means what? That they don't invest in pornography, they don't invest in alcohol, and they don't invest in gambling. That's what that means. Saying that they have no problem investing in financial institutions, which is problematic for a lot of people.
Is the biggest one. The Catholic managed,
Okay.
but same thing.
Yeah.
Financial institutions, so it's still a bit full.
Yeah. I'm saying that you have that entire layer. So, is it okay to get involved with that layer because you're trying to avoid most of societal harms? It's a good point of discussion,
Yeah.
I think. But is it enough for me to say like, no, it's enough to avoid all this? No, if I'm not in a position to support my family after I pass away, I recommend everyone getting like term life insurance, not whole life, but like term life. Up until you get to a point where if you passed away today, your family would be good for like a year.
You gotta do a workshop on this.
All right, bet done.
In the fifth class,
Mhm.
there was a slide where it's like the person who leads, and I feel like number one is like the immediate.
Yeah,
Then the second one is
the father.
the father.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Sure. So basically what happens in terms of leading prayers, we said it's not just a religious role, it's also a political one, right? So for anybody who leads the prayers, this is a mark of his authority. And that's why that person is always going to be given preference, because it's a recognition of that authority. And then after that, why the father? Because the father he's considered the patriarch or the head of the household. And that's why, he is the dominant male figure within a family. Not the Jama'ah. This is just Janazah. Yeah. For the Salat al-Jama'ah, it's always going to be the Amir or the one appointed by the Amir. No, and it creates chaos, right? It creates chaos when you're just like, you have random people, because it's like, okay, what qualified you to lead? You know what I mean? Like, and you create, it's unnecessary animosity when you don't have structure in who's going to lead.
I have a related question on Janazah. My sister lives in Turkey, and she said there is a cultural thing to plant trees next to the graveside.
Yeah.
And putting water over the grave. Well,
Yeah.
is there anything?
I don't see a problem. Well, I don't see a problem with that.
Problem. There's no problem.
No. Why? Why would it be problematic? I mean, yeah. I mean, if you say, even if you say it's a sunnah, they'll base it off. There's a hadith in Bukhari where the Prophet ﷺ took a date palm leaf, he split it in half, and he put it in the grave, saying that I hope through this that these individuals' punishment in the grave would be lightened as long as they stay green. So you have. I mean, you can't say it's a sunnah, because you would say, okay, well, how only the Prophet ﷺ knows who's being punished in the grave and who's not, right? Because Allah actually told him, like, we don't have that knowledge, like we have no idea. He didn't plant fresh plants, right? He broke the leaf and then he put those in the ground. And he himself said that they're not going to stay green long, right? They're going to die at some point. I think it's a bit far-fetched to say it's a sunnah, but it does bring basis for, like, somebody says, like, I want to plant flowers, or like to beautify the grave or whatever. Yeah.
She said that's what she knows. It's like it's a big thing. Everybody does that. It's not just I like trees. Or, no, it's like
it's a big cultural thing.
People believe as if it's a sunnah.
Okay, but I'm saying this is the basis for that belief.
Okay. What about putting water over the grave?
Wallahu alam. I don't know that. I don't know why they do that.
So
Yeah, I would have to ask. Like,
This is why I know, coming from that culture, and you said this is all fine, I really get, how is this is so much strange, weird practices.
so for something for me to be strange or weird, is it enough? Can I use my personal gauge of strangeness as a reason for halal and haram?
Why people are uneducated and they do little by little, they ignore, hopefully sincerely ignorant.
Yeah.
But if nobody says that to them, they can do even greater stuff, even greater.
Okay, let's take it to the end. Like, what is the logical end for how worse can it get? People start planting gardens.
No, they can
Like
go out to the dead, depending if that's shirk or not, depending on what.
if you're Najdi or not.
So, sorry. Yeah, I'm aware there is some say they did actually say it is shirk, the non-Najdi say it's haram,
so,
but not necessarily
like,
shirk.
Yeah, like 98% of them.
Okay. But it's still haram.
Yeah. I mean, even that, like, it depends. Like, are you making dua to the person? Are you making dua toward the person? Are you making dua through the person? Like, I mean, there's a lot of nuance in that I think it's important to keep in mind. It's not how I teach my children. And these aren't practices I would encourage, for sure. Like, don't misunderstand. But the thing is, like, okay, well, these people are planting trees. I'm pretty sure they have bigger problems.
I have a question.
Like, the person who they actually buried is probably because another Muslim killed them. Continue.
I have a question on Imam.
Yeah.
Is it like he recite with them?
Yeah, I mean, what is studying a maqam is just studying vocal cords, right? So understanding the different notes. And why do you study different notes? Because when we recite, even if we recite Quran, it's going to match notes, right? Regardless, even if I've never studied maqamat, if I've never studied notes and chords in my life, if I've never studied music in my life, even then, when I beautify my voice, naturally what's going to happen? It's going to match with some of those chords. So if I'm using those chords to beautify my recitation, why would that be an issue or a problem?
And I was in a message, I was sitting down, and I was sitting down in a position where I had my left hand, like.
Yeah, you're leaning back. Yeah.
And somebody goes, my mind, kind of right.
Yeah.
You shouldn't do this.
Yeah.
What would you say about that? And
We spoke about this last class.
Really?
Yep. Not this specific example, but I had said what? I said, if we don't have a specific wording and it has to do with manners, what can we say? That we can say it's makruh at most. You can't say it's haram.
I was reading when you said, like, if you don't have the intention of like being like this type of people, the information does not apply to them. Now, I was like, I was like, the phone.
I'd have been like, Jazakallah khair.
Like, if you don't like a copy of like people, then it's like the influence
Doesn't apply.
Does not apply.
Yeah. I mean, it's.
Yeah, but I'm being to relax.
I'm saying, okay, it's just don't worry about it, man. Like I said, when it comes to manners and these things, and you have prohibitions, then those prohibitions are taken to be disliked. They're not taken to be like I'm sitting by leaning on my left hand. Is that what was intended? Curious. Any other questions? طيب جزاكم الله خير سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك واشهد ان لا اله الا انت استغفرك واتوب اليك